One of the greatest fears that seniors face today when it comes to retirement is making some type of mistake about their Medicare. And by the way, this is a legitimate fear. Medicare mistakes are very common. They are also very costly and can even affect the type and quality of healthcare services that you receive. So in this video series, I'm going to teach you everything that you need to know about Medicare Parts A, B, C, and D, so that you'll have the knowledge you need to lay aside the fears and be confident in your Medicare choices. I want to begin with just a brief overview of the different parts of Medicare, so we're clear on that. So Medicare Part A is pretty much everything that is going to be related to inpatient type care. It's officially called hospitalization of Medicare. The Part B of Medicare is pretty much everything that's going to be outpatient related, as well as all doctor services. All right. Now, Part C, and by the way, Part A and B came into existence by law in 1965, and the system was implemented then in 1966. So it's not changed too much in that period of time. Now, Part C actually began in 2003. These plans are actually called Advantage plans. Some people call these replacement plans. And so what happens is we have a private health insurance company that takes your A and B benefits and packages that differently, and now you're underneath the umbrella of a private health insurance company instead of original traditional Medicare. So that's Part C plans. And then lastly we have Part D. Now this was added actually in 2006. Now what happens with A and B as well as Advantage plans, they cover professionally administered medications, inpatient and outpatient meds. But for our self-administered medications, that's where the Part D plans come into existence. So again, these are all your prescriptions that you're picking up at your pharmacy or getting through the mail. So these are self-administered medications. So we have Part D plans that go along either with A and B in the supplemental plan, or we have a Part D plan embedded within the Advantage. All right, so those are the four parts of Medicare. All right, that brings us then to this topic of Part A eligibility. How are we eligible? How do we qualify for Medicare Part A? So you'll see the word up here, quarters. It's really all about quarters that we have, and so as we are working today, we are actually funding Medicare Part A through FICA taxes or self-employment taxes. And so what happens, in order for us to be eligible for premium-free Medicare Part A, we actually have to have 40 quarters paid into that tax system. Like I said, right now, 1.45% of every dollar that we make goes into Medicare. The employer actually matches that. If you are self-employed, you pay the full 2.90%. Now, if you're considered to be high income by Medicare, which is a single filer who makes above $200,000, or a married couple that files a joint return that makes above $250,000, there's actually then an additional 0.90% on all that income that's above that. So the point is, the Medicare taxes never stop. Social Security taxes stop this year at $176,100, but Medicare taxes never do. They keep going, and if we're high income, they're even increased. All right, so the whole point is I'm trying to teach that we have to have 40 quarters, which means what? It means we have to have paid into that system for 10 years, because we can only get 4 quarters in a year. And so the way we accumulate quarters, of course, is paying in the system. So this year, and by the way, these numbers change every year, but this year the quarter is equal to $1,810. So if I have net self-employment income, W-2 income, that is equal to $1,810, and I just picked up a quarter. And so again, this year, 2025, if I multiply that times 4, that would be 4, 8 times 32, and then 7. So if I make $7,240 this year in 2025, I picked up my 4 quarters. So we have to have 40 quarters, 10 years worth of work paying into that system, and now we're eligible then to get Medicare Part A premium free. Also, you're eligible for Social Security at 62. And so the point is, we fund this system, and that's how we get Medicare through the eligibility. Now, I want to clarify a couple things about qualifying. The majority of people are going to qualify for Medicare Part A on what we refer to as their own work record, meaning they have their own 40 quarters. That's very, very common today, but sometimes people don't. And so what we can do, we actually can get that from a spouse if we don't have our own 40 quarters. And the way that works, there's some rules. Number one, we had to be presently married to that spouse for a year or longer. longer. That spouse has to be 62 or above. They don't have to be taking Social Security, but they have to be eligible for that. And then if we're approaching 65 ourselves, we don't have 40 quarters. We can get from a spouse as long as we've been married for a year. They're 62, and we'll have to prove that to Social Security as well as Medicare with a marriage license. All right, so you can qualify on someone else's work record. There's another way in which we can get this, and this would be ex-spouse. So if someone is now divorced, they can actually go back to an ex-spouse with a couple rules. Number one, if you're going to draw your quarters from an ex-spouse, you had to have been married to that spouse for at least 10 years. We have to prove that with the divorce decree. Again, that ex-spouse has to be at least 62 years old to draw. And as long as you did not remarry prior to the age of 60, you can draw those benefits from the ex-spouse. So if you remarried prior to the age of 60 and you're still married to that person, you can't go back to the ex-spouse. But if that second marriage ended in death or divorce, meaning now you're single, then you could go back to that ex-spouse. All right. So the whole point is we're looking for 40 quarters, and so we can qualify for that in a couple different ways. All right. So that's eligibility. Let's now talk about actually enrolling into Medicare Part A, and we have some options in regards to this. And so I'm going to go through these different options with you. So the first one would be Part A. Now watch this. Being delayed. Okay. Now I know a lot of people here that even if they're going to keep working past 65, they have to enroll in Medicare Part A, and if they don't, they're going to be penalized. For 99% of all people, that is not true. There's only 1% of the population that ever has to pay a penalty on Part A. And so my whole point is you can do this. You can actually delay Part A when you're approaching 65. Now here's the thing. The only one that could do this would be people that are still working or their spouse is still working, and you're covered by an active employment provided plan. This is not COBRA. This is not retirement. You actually are still working. Your spouses were covered by this group plan at work, and that group plan has 20 employees on the payroll or more. That's the key. 19 or less, can't do this. 20 or more, you can't. You can actually delay A and B. And so one of your options is delay Part A. So who should do this? In my opinion, anyone that's still working again or their spouse is covered by a group plan, but you have what is called a health savings account that you want to contribute to. You're contributing to it now. You'd like to continue to do that. And so if you don't take A or B, you can continue to fully fund that HSA until you get ready to apply for Medicare and retire in the future. And so my point is HSAs are very nice. They're like a healthcare IRA. We put money in that's pre-tax. If it's a growth account, it grows tax deferred. And if you pull that money out on qualified medical expenses, that way it's tax exempt forever. And so HSAs are wonderful. They're, again, healthcare IRAs. And so I like them. I think they're nice to have. So if you have one, don't do A, don't do B. Because if you did any form of Medicare, Part A, Part B or both, you can put no new money into your HSA. Now, the HSA money you have in there is yours, but you can't build that any further. So again, you absolutely can delay, and you don't have to worry about it as long as you or your spouse have 40 quarters. Okay, now, if you are approaching 65 and you are covered by a good group plan that you're going to continue to keep, meaning you like the group plan, the cost of it, and you're going to keep working, well, then I would suggest what you would do, as long as we don't have an HSA, is I would do Part A only. You have Part A only. Why? Because your employer has 20 employees or more. You don't have to do A or B, but as long as you don't have that HSA, I think it's very prudent, very wise to do Part A only. Now, in this position, large group plan, what happens is your company plan is going to be the first payer. Okay, they will pay first. And then Medicare, because again, large employer, your Medicare Part A is going to be the second payer. And so what happens if you have a hospital claim, group plan pays first, but there's probably going to be some kind of a balance. And so Part A will actually pay some of that. Now, there are some rules. Part A is not going to pay any of your deductibles. They're not going to pay any of your copays for the hospital, but they will pay coinsurance. So if you have coinsurance responsibility with your health plan, as most people do, remember coinsurance would be 80-20 plan or 90-10. If you have some of that, then Medicare could pay some of that. And so I would highly suggest, as long as we don't have an HSA, to go ahead and take Part A only. Yeah, there's no cost to it for 99% of all people anyways. And so in my opinion, it's a very good move. All right, then I want to just mention this while we're on this part. Some of you, as an option with Part A, you're also going to do Part A and Part B, meaning you're going to do both of these. And so the reason is because you or your spouse are no longer working. you don't have an employer-provided plan, you have to start Medicare at 65. And the same would apply if you're approaching 65 and you're on COBRA insurance. You have to take Medicare A and B. COBRA moves to second payer position, so you got to enroll in Medicare to put them in the first payer position. And if you don't, you become the first payer. So again, if you're approaching 65, no work plan, or you're on COBRA, you are going to take Medicare A and B at 65. If you're on TRICARE, retired military, same thing. You're taking A and B at 65. Anyone that's working for a small employer, that's 19 or fewer people on the payroll, you're going to do the same thing. You're taking A and B at 65 because your small group employer plan moves to the second payer position. If you don't enroll, you become the first payer. And then anyone that's on an Affordable Care Act plan, most people today that are on ACA plans are getting some type of a financial incentive. They may get a reduced premium. They may get tax subsidies. There's cost sharing by the federal government. And so that's what makes many of the ACA plans very attractive. But what happens at 65, any financial incentive you're receiving, reduced premium, cost sharing, tax subsidies, they're gone the month you turn 65. And so you're going to drop that ACA plan at 65 and go on Medicare A and B. All right. And so there are some, again, that can delay it, some that can have A only. And those of you that must go on Medicare, you're actually going to take Medicare A and B. Now, I want to mention something just real quickly about this. If you today are receiving Social Security benefits of any form, that could be your own retirement benefits, it could be spousal benefits, it could be survivor benefits, meaning a widow or widower, then what happens is you're going to be automatically enrolled into Medicare A and B. And I'll show you here in a few minutes a little bit more about this, but I want to mention here because what's going to happen is you're going to be automatically enrolled into A and B. And I'm going to show you that some of you may want to drop the B and actually go to this Part A only position if you have a good group plan. Again, I'll share more about this later, but in context of these options, I want to make sure you know that your Social Security, because you're taking it, they automatically enrolled you into A and B. Hey, if you found this video helpful and you want to see more Medicare information just like it, then go below, right below the video, and you can give us the thumbs up as well as subscribe to our channel. And every time I put a new video, which is about 2 every week, you'll be notified of that video, and others just like you who need this vital information will get it as well. All right, that really brings us to the third issue when it comes to Medicare Part A, and that has to do with the coverage. What is Part A going to cover? On this, what I'm going to do is list out the 4 primary things Part A covers. There's a few minor things, but the big ticket items would be this. If you are admitted to the hospital, all your inpatient care is going to be ran through the Part A system. And so this is room and board, the nursing services, any of the tests that the hospital is running, those kind of things, going to be paid through the Part A of Medicare. So that's inpatient care. And by the way, sometimes people go to the hospital and they're on an observation basis. That's not yet covered by A. That's going to be covered B because it's still considered, observation is still outpatient. So be sure you know that to be covered by Part A, which is great insurance, they're going to have to actually admit you to the hospital. All right, so that's that. The second big item would be skilled nursing facilities. Okay, and really this is also inpatient, but this is inpatient rehab. This is after someone had a stroke, or maybe a hip replacement, or maybe there was an accident or an injury, a fall, or where they're going to have to go to skilled nursing for some fairly intensive rehab. And so it's the skilled nursing facility bills that are actually paid through the Medicare Part A system. All right, I'll teach you a little bit more about this as far as what that looks like for cost, but I want to make sure you're clear that is covered by Part A. And then the third item that could be expensive would be home health care. A lot of people say, how on earth, if you're talking about going home health care, why would that be covered under Part A? Well, here's why. This is someone that was in the hospital and now they're being discharged. They don't have to go to skilled nursing for that intensive of a rehab, but they need some rehab still. So they send them home instead for rehab. And so the home health care agency is going to be paid through Part A because this whole billing and this whole health situation started in Part A. The home health care bills will be paid through Part A as well. Okay. And then lastly, a big ticket item for the Part A is going to be hospice care. This would be when someone has been diagnosed with a terminal illness. a very high likelihood of recovery. They are on Medicare, and so they're either in a hospice facility or maybe at home, but the hospice bills are going to be paid through Medicare Part A. So again, they've been diagnosed with terminal illness. No longer are they really seeking treatment. Rather, it is spiritual care, comfort care, managed pain, those kinds of things. And that's what hospice is all about. So once we go on hospice, it's the Part A of Medicare that are going to cover those bills as well. I want to mention something about this. Some people are not aware of it, but hospice actually will pay for a caregiver. Let's say you're at home and a family member is taking care of you. They will actually pay for, I think it's a 5-day stay, for you to go to a regular facility to give your family member some respite care, and they'll cover the costs of that. And so I think it's a 5-day type of a stay. But again, a wonderful benefit offered by Medicare Part A. All right, that now brings us to the cost of Medicare Part A. We're going to talk about the premiums, the penalties that could be associated with Medicare Part A, and then we're going to talk about actually out-of-pocket cost for Part A services. So let's deal first of all with the premiums for Medicare Part A. Now, I talked to you earlier in the video about 40 quarters. The majority of people have their own 40 quarters. If not, we can give them from a spouse or maybe even an ex-spouse. So as long as we have the 40 quarters, Part A will have a zero premium for life. In other words, we never have to pay a premium as long as we've had the 40 quarters. Why is that? Well, because you've been paying for it all your life. That 1.45% or that 2.90%, if you're self-employed, you've been funding Medicare Part A. And so when you go on Medicare, they don't charge you a premium as long as, again, we have the 40 quarters. Now, not everyone does have 40 quarters. Like I said earlier, 99% do of their own or a spouse or ex-spouse, but 1% does not. And so if they have somewhere between 30 to 39 quarters this year, the cost of Medicare Part A is actually $285 a month. So remember, if someone is close, they have 36 and they only need 4 more quarters if they can go back to work. Why is that? Well, because the quarter this year is what, $1,810. We pick up a quarter. So if I need 4 quarters, all I have to do is make what, $7,240, and I picked up my 4 quarters. So I moved from paying $285 a month to actually having it at zero premium for the rest of my life. Okay, but if I am going to be between the 30 to 39, you're going to pay $285 a month for it. Then, if I don't have even that many, but I'm down here between 0 to 29, you can buy this. This year, it's $515 a month for people that would be in this category here. Again, they can still go back to work, but if they have to go on Medicare Part A, they're going to have to start paying for it. All right, so those are the premiums. Now I want to draw your attention to this right here, this whole issue of penalties. Now remember, I said earlier that when you have 40 quarters or more, you will never be penalized for Medicare Part A. You can delay it if you have an HSA. If you go on Part A, that's fine, but you don't have to if you're still working, covered by a good group plan that has 20 employees or more. You truly can delay it. So whether I take it 65 or 70 or 80 or 90, doesn't matter, because as long as it's zero, it will always be zero, okay? So the people that have to worry about penalties is this group of people here. They have less than 40 quarters. So if they don't enroll into Medicare at 65 or when they first retire, they delay it for a time because they don't want to pay for it, then they are going to be penalized. And so the way it works is this. For every 12 months I go without Part A when I should have been on it, they assess me a 10% penalty, and I pay that 10% penalty. If it's for 1 year I went without, I got to pay my penalty for 2 years. So that 10% is assessed 2 years. If I go without for 2 years, I have a 20% penalty, and now I have to pay it for 4 years. I go without 3 years, 30%. I'm going to have to pay it for 6 years. Because you can see the formula. That's how they're going to calculate this. And so what's happening is this percentage of penalty, depending upon the years, is actually added to that. So if I go without 1 year on Part A and I'm up here at 30 to 39, I'm going to pay an extra $28.50 when I enroll. It's going to be added to that, and that $28.50 would be added then for 2 years to my premium for Part A. And you see, the longer I wait, the more it's going to cost me. So that's why if you have to buy it, you better do it on time so that you can avoid the penalties. Because not only are you going to have to pay for it, if you don't do it at the right time, you'll be penalized for it as well. All right, so that's the premiums and penalties. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about the actual out-of-pocket costs that we incur and that we're liable for when we use Part A services. Okay, so have a little grid up here I want to show you. We call your out-of-pocket expenses or your financial liability, we actually call those gaps. Medicare is really very good insurance, but other than preventive services, Medicare doesn't cover anything 100%. You're always going to have some type of a balance to the bill, some financial liability you're responsible for, hence the word gap. Okay, so Medicare covers, but you're going to have to pay something for it as well. So we have 3 gaps on the A of Medicare, again, as we talk in the video about Part A. And so we begin Medicare Part A with a deductible. This year, that deductible is $1,676. I'm shooting this video. It is June the 12th of 2025. And so that's the deductible this year. Deductible simply means that you have to pay this before Medicare begins to pay. And so this is your out-of-pocket exposure for up to a 60-day stay in the hospital. And I want you to see is that deductible is the same whether you're in the hospital 1 day, 3 days, 10 days, 50 days, up to 60. Anything between 1 to 60 costs you $1,676. Now, one clarification about this deductible, it is not an annual deductible. This deductible is actually called a benefit period deductible. Benefit period defined by Medicare is this. When I'm admitted to the hospital, I begin a benefit period. Let's say I'm in the hospital 7 days and I'm discharged. So I'm admitted, benefit period begins. 7 days later, they send me home, I'm discharged. From the date of discharge for the next 60 days, I am still in that benefit period. And so that means that after I'm discharged, if I have to be re-hospitalized, I go back to the hospital, then I'm still in the same benefit period and that same deductible applies. But let's suppose that I'm admitted to the hospital, benefit period begins, I'm discharged 7 days later, and nothing happens during that 60-day window, but happens after that. Let's say I get pneumonia in February, I'm hospitalized, I owe $1,676. Everything is fine, and then November rolls around same year, and I live in an area where it snows and ice, and I slip on the ice, break my leg, have to go to the hospital, have to be operated on. I would have paid a deductible 2 times that year. February for pneumonia, I broke my leg and had to be operated on in November. And so the whole point is it's a benefit period deductible, not annual, all right? And so we're responsible for those each time they occur. Now, that deductible, again, very reasonable, but here's what happens. If someone is really sick and they're in the hospital longer than 60 continuous days and they roll into, still in the hospital, to the 3rd month, what happens is Medicare begins to charge more money. So the 3rd month, you have a daily copay of $419. So now we're spending, what, $12,000 to $13,000 for month 3. Again, pretty rare, but it does happen. Now, if I'm in the hospital after 3 months, I'm still in month 4 and month 5, probably in a coma. In this situation, now they double the copay to $838. So month 4 and month 5 cost me $25,000 each of those months. And so you're responsible for that. Again, we call these extended hospital stays. They're rare, but they happen. And when they do, they're very expensive. All right, now we go to skilled nursing. We talked about this earlier, being covered by Medicare. And so Medicare says the first 20 days in the skilled nursing facility for your rehab will cost you nothing as long as you were in the hospital for at least 3 full days. They call it 3 midnights, 72 full hours. So as long as we had that stay in the hospital and then we're discharged to skilled nursing, Medicare will cover everything the first 20 days. If they discharge you earlier than that, Medicare is not going to pay anything. And that's why they have to keep people, of course, that are on Medicare. And so first 20 days, Medicare pays it all. After that, if you're still in need of care, we have 80 more days of skilled nursing care eligibility by Medicare, but now we have a responsibility financially, and this year that is $209.50 a day. $209.50 a day. Now, they tell me right now, for the average Medicare recipient, they're in the skilled nursing facility somewhere between 35 to 40 days. So that's an extra, what, 15 or 20 days times 209. So $3,000 to $4,000 what the average person is spending out of pocket. All right, so that's going to be your out-of-pocket exposure, these gaps that exist within Medicare Part A. Hey, if you come to a place where you know you're going to have to make some Medicare decisions pretty soon, the best way to do that is to click up here in this right-hand corner, and you'll have an opportunity to be able to book a call with one of our Medicare guides. All the guides around here I have personally trained, and they truly are professional. They'll answer your questions, and they'll show you different Medicare options to make sure that you're confident in the decision that you make. All right, that brings us then to the last issue that we want to deal with concerning Part A, and that is Medicare Part A with a Medigap policy. We just went through all the gaps. I wrote those out. Here they are typed out for you, real nice and clean now, but we're responsible for all of these gaps. The majority of people are not interested in that kind of liability, and so what many people will do is they'll take these gaps and they'll transfer the liability they have to an insurance company, and that insurance company issues to you a Medigap policy, also called a supplemental policy. You have, of course, have to pay them a premium for them to take that liability from you, and so these gaps can be transferred away. And so right now in the market, we actually have 10 different types of supplemental plans, these Medigap policies. This whole system truly started in 1965. They have revamped them through the years, but in our present system today, we have these 10 plans, all right, as options. I'm not going to go through all of them for sure, but I'm going to share with you really the most popular plans today. But I want to point something out to you. You can probably notice on your screen, we have two of these that are in red, and these plans are called the C plan and the F plan. Both of these were very popular plans. The F plan was the most popular, but what happened, Medicare changed some rules that went into effect of 1/1/2020. And the rules are, if you started Medicare before 1/1/2020, you could still buy C and F plans. But anyone that's starting Medicare after 1/1/2020, the C and the F plans are no longer options. Now, anyone that had a C or F plan, or they can still buy it because they started Medicare before 1/1/2020, can keep their plans, their lifetime plans. They're not going to cancel those, but you had to be grandfathered in. So people starting Medicare after 1/1/2020, the C and the F are no longer options. So the plans right now that are the most popular are going to be the G plan and the N plan. All right, and I'll explain all of these here in just a second. But the whole point is what we do when we get a Medigap policy is we're saying, I don't want this financial liability. I want the insurance company to take care of that for me, and you're willing to pay them a premium for them to do that. So let's look at the details then of how we get a Medigap policy, F, G, or N, and have these gaps covered. All right, so the first one I want to draw your attention to would be the F plan. And again, if you're starting Medicare after 1/1/2020, not even an option, but some of you are. In fact, they just wrote a couple F plans in California just this week, and so people are still getting these plans. But the F plan, the way it works as we look at these gaps is this. It's going to cover every single one of these gaps, right? So you would have no out-of-pocket expenses whatsoever on that F plan. In addition to that, what happens, you'll notice here with Medicare hospitalization, they only cover you up to 150 days, and they're done. And so what happens is that F plan will give you another 365 days in the hospital at zero cost to you. Now, that doesn't happen often, but it happens sometimes. And so you would have not only the 5 months with Medicare, so of course some copays covered by the F plan as well, but also another 365 days of eligibility at zero cost to you. All right, that then brings us to the most popular plan today for people that are actually starting Medicare after 2020, and that would be the G plan. The most popular today would be this plan. Again, it's a Medigap, filling in the gap. So what's it going to do? Well, just like the F, it is going to fill in all those gaps. You're not going to see any bill whatsoever. Plus, that G plan is going to give you those 365 days in the hospital. Now, the difference between the F and the G, of course, some people can't get the F, but if I was just looking at the numbers, the premium amounts between F and G, your G plan is going to be about $50 to $100 cheaper than the F plan. So even people that could qualify for an F plan because of their age, oftentimes they don't get F because that G plan is almost as comprehensive. In fact, when we talk about the G plan, the only thing it doesn't cover that the F covered was what we call the Medicare Part B deductible. And again, I'll teach that in another video, but I want to make sure you're clear. And that's $257, and that's for the whole year. So the F covers all gaps, the G covers all but the Part B deductible. It's once a year, $257. So if I'm paying $50 a month for my F plan, that's $600 extra a year. What's that $600 getting me? It's getting me $257 back. Well, Well, again, not a very good value. You may be paying $100 extra for the F plan. That's $1,200 for what? For a $257 deductible. So again, I don't think the F's going to make sense for most people today. So the G plan, again, very, very good value. It's going to provide all the gaps to be covered by the plan as well, is at 365 days. All right, that brings us into the last supplemental plan. Again, very popular today, wonderful option for many people, called the N plan. All right, so here's the way the N plan is going to work, filling in the gaps. Just like the F and just like the G plan. Truly, folks, on the A side of Medicare, you have full coverage. So excellent coverage on the A side. Now, when we talk about comparing the N to the G, that N plan is going to be about $40 or $50 a month cheaper than that G plan. But here's what happens. Remember how we talked about the Part B side? So what happens on the Part B side with the N plan is you're going to have to pay your $257 deductible, and you're also responsible for what is called excess charges. This is when a doctor adds 15% to the bill. The F and the G covered the excess. N does not. It doesn't happen often. Right now, less than 5% of doctors do it anyways. Not a whole lot of risk, but a little bit of risk. And so some people may choose to avoid the N because they're worried about excess. G covers it, F covers it, N does not. But also when it comes to the N plan, we've got some reasonable copays. Every time you see a doctor with an N plan, you're going to pay a $20 copay. And if you go to the emergency room, you got a $50 copay. So again, minimal risk, but again, there's some out-of-pocket expenses here that you would be responsible for on the N plan. But again, that N plan, it may be $40 or $50 a month difference, sometimes even more than that. And so what are you taking on versus the G? Got to pay excess, got a few copays, and some people that may be looking for a little bit more of a lower premium oftentimes will then go with that N plan. I believe the G and the N are both wonderful. It just depends on your budget and your risk tolerance as well. So these are the ways that we can get this covered. And remember, when it comes to that N plan, we still have that full 365 days of hospital coverage. Once Medicare is not going to pay anything, that N plan will cover that for you as well.